Hey guys, it's the woman with the husky voice reporting for duty. Hi guys, I'm Ratile Yolanda, your host of Yolanda the Yapper, the podcast. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber or you've been watching my content, welcome back, sweetheart. Welcome back, baby. Welcome back. So, today, guys, you know what I mean? So you know what we gotta do before we get into the topic of today. I have to give you a word, okay? Okay, so today's word from this yappa goes like this. One day, it just clicks. You realize what's important and what isn't. You learn to care less about what other people think of you and more about what you think of yourself. You realize how far you've come, and you remember when you thought things were such a mess that you would never recover. And you smile. You smile because you are truly proud of yourself and the person you fought to become. That is the word for today, girl. That is the word for today. And today's word is inspired by the fact that I woke up one day and I stopped caring about what people thought of my appearance, my weight, my body. I just stopped caring about people's opinions when it came to that, because at the end of the day, all that should matter are the opinions that I have about those things. You know, my opinions about my body, my weight, and my appearance are the only ones that should matter. As long as your opinions are not coming from a place of genuine concern, I don't care. I simply do not care. Like, now, if you were to comment on my body, I'm just gonna be like, okay. Like, listen, I've had someone say to me, oh, you know, my thighs, when they were as big as yours, I started working out so that and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm not insecure about my thighs. So if maybe you're trying to project, I think you're projecting. Because I'm not saying my body is perfect to me and that there are things I don't want to change about it. They definitely are, but I'm not fixated that much on them. Like, I'm living life. I'm trying to, at least. I'm not fixated on how big or small I am, and no. I get allow that thing who control my life to that extent. No. So I honestly am at a stage in my life where comments about my body, about my appearance, about my weight, as long as they're not coming from a place of genuine concern, I cancel them out. I do not regard them. I hold no space for them in my life anymore. Because my body, I learned to love my body in all, no matter how it looks like. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say on that. You really do wake up one day and just stop caring about certain things. You know what I mean? You learn to love you for you, and and that's that on that. Period. So let us get into today's topic of conversation. Alrighty then, friends. Today we're going to be talking about living with an invisible disability. For those of you that don't know, I am visually impaired, so that is my invisible disability. Yeah. Before we get into it, I do want to give y'all a quick definition of what invisible disabilities are. Even though I do feel it's self-explanatory, it's basically in the term, but yeah. Invisible disabilities are conditions that significantly impact someone's daily life but aren't immediately obvious to others because they don't have outward signs like a wheelchair, cane, or cast. Right. And then examples of invisible disabilities are mental health challenges, autism, hearing loss, visual impairments, chronic pain or fatigue, or cognitive impairments like dementia, brain injury, etc., etc., etc. Right. Yes. So the reason I wanted to talk about invisible disabilities, to be specific, is because I feel that we don't talk enough about how navigating life with an navigating life with an invisible disability. Oh my goodness, how navigating life with an invisible disability is, and I just wanted to share my perspective on it as well as someone living with one. And also just I wanted to kind of give, like, I hope that when my podcast does not hope, eventually when my podcast does blow up, I'm hoping that this episode is listened to by the relevant people, and, you know, more conversations surrounding invisible disabilities are had, and, you know, there's more accommodative measures put in place for people living with the disabilities that I mentioned, right? So yeah. All right, let's get into it. Like I said, guys, I am visually impaired. I have been living with my visual impairment for my whole life. As someone who is born with, when you're born with albinism, it affects your vision. Not for everybody though. There are people who, for example, can drive, can see normally, and all of that stuff. I, however, am part of the group of people who cannot drive. I cannot see well enough to drive myself, unfortunately. But yeah, so like I said, I've lived with it for my whole life. I've worn glasses forever. I've been wearing glasses since forever, like since I don't even remember what age I was, but I do know that when I was in crash, when I was in preschool, I was wearing glasses. So that is as long as I have been wearing glasses for my darling. And yeah, when it comes to like how I'm treated at home as someone living with an invisible disability, I am loved and supported so much. The people in my life, my loved ones, have always made sure to make life easier for me. They've always made sure to help me. They take me wherever I need to go. They make sure that I'm not hitting anything, I'm not bumping against anything. They've always made sure that I'm good. So same thing with my friends. Like I have a great support system, and I'm so grateful for it. Get like you go into detail about my support system, and then I'm gonna cry, and it's gonna be a lie. We don't want that. We don't want that. But yeah. So my inner circle definitely does cater to my needs. The challenges I have faced as someone living with an invisible disability, I met them outside. I met them in the schools, in the varsities, on the streets, you know what I'm saying? I met the problems, I met the challenges of, I got to see the difficulties of living with a disability like mine. Gets into the world, you know? So I'm gonna start off with when I was in primary school. There was a school I went to for a very short while, for a short time, and I asked my mom, "Kante mama, why do I have very short memories of my time at this specific school?" Right? So she said to me that I was there for probably like I don't even know if it was a couple of months or a year or what, but they called her and my dad in and told them that your daughter is blind, so we cannot help her. And so I was taken out of the school, and they took me to a different school. Now, when I got to that school, they didn't have measures in place to accommodate me, right? And so my parents were called in again, and my parents had to come up with a plan on how to I guess my parents and the principal had to come up with a plan on how they're going to make my learning experience here easier, right? And shame, they did. So what they did for me was they firstly tried moving my table all the way to the front of the class, like right in front of the board, like so much so that my table in your komale bought another board, right, where the board was. That didn't work because I could only see what was in front of me, but it had to be really big also in order for me to see. Now that is how bad my vision is, right? Cool. So that didn't work because then I wasn't going to be able to see everything else above me, right? So then plan B was they got me a whiteboard, like a mini whiteboard, like A4 paper size whiteboard, and they got me a marker, right? So there were students in my class who would be kind enough to write down what was on the board for me and then give me back the board, and then I would copy it onto my book, right? Now this wasn't always the case. Sometimes, kids being kids, they would get irritated and not want to do that for me. And yeah, there were some teachers who were very understanding when it came to that and some who were not. It's I think it's partly why I guess I have such a I don't really have a lot of nice things to say about school, because I think the starting years for me were a bit like, they were not so pleasant. So, naturally, kids would get tired, obviously, of writing for me, right? And some teachers didn't understand so that I'm able to see, because I'm not going to be able to do this on my own. Do you know what I mean? And I would have like teachers. I remember when I was in grade 7, standard 7, right? For those of you that don't know what grade 7 is, when I was in standard 7, there was a teacher of mine. I was in a Stswana class, right? So, my teacher writes homework on the board, right? And she asks everybody to copy it down. Now, I'm in a grade where now I've gone through years of, people, I guess some people ever gone through experiences where people were just really irritated by home kwalela all the time. It was exhausting for them, right? So I, started getting scared of asking people to write for me. And this particular teacher that I had was not very kind to me either. So I ended up not writing the homework, and, that was that. And then I come back to school the next day, I don't have the homework, right? So this lady, calls out all the people who didn't do homework and all of that stuff. And then, she beats us, right? She made us beat ourselves. She said, take the, what do you call it, this thing? Blackboard wiper. I forgot the word. To wipe the blackboard, she's like, take it and then scrunch your fingers together, and then beat yourself with it. And beat your hand with it, actually. Yeah, beat your hand with it. Beat your hand with it up until she said I should beat my hand up until my hand turned red. Up until my hand started swelling up. So I did that, because naturally, what am I gonna do, right? I was a kid. I was powerless at the time. I was really scared of, I guess, defiling people. I did not know how to stand up for myself at the time. That happened, and thinking back at it, it was such a not so pleasant thing to have gone through. Honestly, I don't wish that on anybody, especially as a child, as a 12-year-old who really is trying to figure out how to, navigate and all of that, and that was not cute at all. But so that happened, and then I was scared, like I said, so I only told my mom about it. I think it's like a month before school was over, before I was done with that grade. And my mom said, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, my child. I wish you would have told me sooner. But, on the bright side, you are going to be done with this place. And I was going to leave the school, because the school, I think, didn't have secondary school at the time that I was going there. So, yeah, that ended. And then going into my high school, I went to a high school that used electronics for reading and for learning. We used tablets and things like that. But don't think that the unpleasantry stopped there. They didn't grow up. So when I was in grade 9, I went to school in South Africa. Okay, so when I was in grade 9, I believe it was grade 9, yes. So I was in an arts and culture class, and I had this who was teaching me, right? So same thing as usual. I don't know, I can't remember, but we were learning something, right? And there was something written down on the board, and I think my tablet couldn't really pick up that thing on the board. It was not exactly clear, I think. So I asked somebody to help me, right? So she gets upset that I was talking during the time she was asking us to write, right? So I tell her that, ma'am, I was doing that because I can't see what's in front of me, right? This lady then goes on to say that my vision problem is not her responsibility. She does not understand why my parents even brought me here. Did my parents think? And then I got really emotional because she did that in front of a class of kids. She did that in front of my other classmates, and I just felt really embarrassed. And and she was telling me that, there's no need for you to cry, like crying's not gonna help you, and all of that stuff. So then I told my parents about that the day that it happened. When I got back from school, I told my parents. I was in boarding school at the time, so you can imagine I'm dealing with this, and I'm far away from home. So I get home and I get to boarding house and I tell my parents, and immediately the next day my parents came to school, girl, and they came to solve that situation. And yeah, the lady ended up being very nice to me after that. She was very, very patient, and yeah, she would always ask me. I never had to ask Hore. I never had to, say it for myself that I cannot see. Like, yeah, so my pleasantries didn't stop, when I got to high school or whatever. And yeah, that was not fun. That really was not fun to deal with, as a kid, as a teen. I'm already having to learn to accept myself as I am. So to have people, and it's not like my mom said that when I was 7 years old, before I started primary school. I really don't remember this conversation, but she did say that when you started school, I did have a conversation with you about your vision and just about you in general, that you are going to meet people who are not going to be kind to you, my child. You're going to meet people who aren't going to be very understanding to your situation and things like that. I don't quite remember the conversation. I was very young, like I said. That anything before Gebala 2, I wasn't really much of a, I guess, Nikisiki Kalihi and stuff. I was not alive yet. I was not awake yet, you know what I mean? And developing Kali, I had not developed, But yeah, so yeah, my mom had that conversation with me, and like I said, going back to what I was saying, having to deal with that while I'm trying to come to terms with my situation was not the easiest thing in the world. And there were not a lot of people around me who had the same problem that I had. So having to learn to accept myself and not really having like a point of reference or someone I could have a conversation with, like another blind person, to say, yo, how do you deal with this? It wasn't an easy thing, because a lot of my friends all of my friends in high school, they did not have vision problems. I mean, they did not have vision problems to the extent that I had them, right? So I really didn't have like a point of reference. I could talk to them about it, but like obviously they're not going to understand, because you need to have gone through it to understand, you know what I mean? So I think if I had someone who had the same situation as mine, it would have been easier to deal with, those kind of blows. It would have been easier to take those blows if I had somebody to support me. Like, if not support me, but like if I had someone I could go and talk to who was in the same situation as mine. So yeah, that was not great at all. That was not great. That was not fun. But when I did get to varsity, I do want to point out though that I think that was the only incident I had in high school, and then afterwards, hella, all my other teachers were definitely very accommodating, and even my classmates were a lot more accommodating, and I had friends and things like that, and not that I didn't have friends in primary school, but yeah, when I got to high school, I think that was the only incident I had. So the unpleasantries I dealt with in primary lessened by a lot when I got to high school. So yeah, when I got to varsity, girl, so before I even started my classes, before I even enrolled for anything, I was taken to the disabilities office. So my dad inquired on my behalf. He knew somebody who worked at the university that I went to. So he inquired on my behalf on what systems are in place for someone living with a disability. And I was taken to the disabilities offices, and they explained, we deal with these disabilities. And then I told them my situation, and they really, really, guys, I only have good things to say about how they handled my situation, right? So when I got to varsity, so for my case, right, they wrote, not just for my case, for anybody with any sort of disability, you got a letter that stated what your disability was, and I guess the accommodations, right, that needed to be put in place for you. So for my case, I got a letter. I stated that I have a vision problem. My font size was size 32, which is like, it fits on A5 paper, right? So Yeah, they did that. And then I would write my examinations in a separate building. Like, I'd write my examinations in they had a disabilities writing room or reading room. I would write there instead of writing with everybody else. They would ask me if they needed to turn on or turn off the lights if the lights were too bright for me. They would ask me if they needed to print out my paper in a certain color. They got me a laptop with like text to speech input, magnifier, all of those things. So I could zoom the magnifier to when I had to zoom in the magnifier, guys, I had to zoom it to the last percentage, the last, as in like the biggest thing on my screen would be my cursor. When I talk about how bad my vision is, right? If you put a laptop on the table, I need to be able to see, right? I have to see a single letter on the screen. A single letter, and I have to scroll to like read the rest of the word because that's how bad my vision is, right? So yeah, when I got to varsity, they did an amazing job with helping me, like with making my learning experience there a lot easier. The one thing that I would have appreciated was a guide, like someone to walk around with me on campus, because when I started varsity, I was very, very anxious about how I was going to navigate such a big environment by myself because I did not have friends. I went to school in South Africa. I came back home to do university in Botswana, and I did not have friends. I had lost touch with a lot of my primary school mates and stuff like that. So it was like going to a completely new place and meeting new people and things like that. So I was really worried about how I was going to find my classes and stuff like that. I was so worried that my dad took it upon himself to go with me and get my timetable printed. And because he had been in my varsity shortly during his time of being in school, he went with me and we looked for all the buildings where my classes were going to be so that I knew where my classes were, right? So I knew what building my classes were. Then I'd have to figure that out myself. So and yeah, I didn't mention this when I was recording, but I made friends within a week, within my first week of being on campus. So I actually didn't end up navigating like most of my days on campus alone. It really, really caused me a lot of anxiety because I had already had so many unpleasant experiences, like I said, in high school and primary school, and I just really didn't want to have to deal with all of that. I was so worried about like missing my classes and then failing. Guys, when I started varsity, oh my goodness. I was so scared. I did not want to go there because I was just so scared of having to deal with the unpleasantries. Again, I didn't want to have to deal with explaining my vision. I didn't want to have to deal with unkind lecturers. I did not want any parts of that, So yeah, like I said, when I got to varsity, they did all of those things. And what I would have appreciated, like I said, that is what I was saying. I would have liked them to provide me with a guide. Ooh, guys, I've written things down there, but I'm still going on a tangent. I've written things down, but I guess it's not helping. I'm still gonna say whatever I wanna say. So I would have appreciated a guide. And they actually told me, I think my fourth year, that if you actually wanted someone to guide you around campus, we actually could have provided that for you. I'm like, I didn't know that. Because I would see people, but I thought this is someone that your parents obviously have to provide for you. This isn't something that the school can provide. And they could. I didn't know they could. Would have been nice to have one, honestly. But I guess maybe in not having one, I was able to become, I'm not completely independent, but I was able to have some form of independence, I guess. It lessened my codependency, I could say. So I guess it was a good thing that it wasn't something that I thought to ask for, or something that they provided for me off the bat. So yeah, that's I guess an overview of of how I navigated, living life with an invisible disability, I guess in the school setup. I'm yet to start working and things like that. But outside of school, I have had my unpleasant experiences as well. I remember when I was going to vote last year. So my dad took me to the disabilities offices, to the offices where people who are disabled, pregnant, or elderly go and vote, right? So instead of me standing in a long line where we're going to be treated just like everybody else, my dad took me to where the people with all of those things I mentioned are assisted, right? So upon arriving into the office where I was getting assisted, some lady stops me and she's like, what am I doing here, right? I'm with my dad, mind you. And we're like, my dad's like, I'm bringing my child to vote, right? She has a disability, so that is why I brought her here. So she looks at me and she's like, she doesn't think I have a disability. She doesn't think I have a disability, and she thinks I'm lying. She's under the impression that I'm lying. Do you know what I mean? I do want to say this, guys. And that's the downside of living with an invisible disability. You need to prove it all the time. You need to over-explain all the time. I need to divulge personal information about myself, about my medical history, just for you to believe me. And I don't want to live like that. Nobody living with an invisible disability wants to live like that. If I tell you, listen, I am visually impaired, believe me. I walk around yes, because I'm awaiting getting glasses, right? If I tell you I am visually impaired, I'm not lying. I don't benefit anything from lying about that. If the situation we're in does not warrant me giving you my medical history or my personal life story, when it comes to whether I have a visual impairment or not, if the situation does not warrant that, don't make me prove myself. There's no need for me to prove myself. I don't need to prove myself to anyone. Nobody with with an invisible disability needs to prove to you that they have an invisible disability if the situation doesn't warrant it. Like in that situation that I was voting, it doesn't warrant especially because kids a parent, that information, you're not going to do anything with it after 10 minutes. So Santla, she wasn't even the one that was helping me. So for her, maybe for the person that was going to write down my voting information, it would have been relevant for them. But that wasn't information that was required. When we were voting last year, there was no information put out there. If you have a disability of some sort, please do come with proof that you have that disability. That wasn't requested of me, right? So there was no need for me to prove to you. Do you know what I mean? Especially if you're not going to help me. Obana, because she wasn't helping me, I think it pissed me off there because san tusi. So, and just also, we need to stop. Disability doesn't have a look. It does not have a look. Not everybody's on a wheelchair. Not everybody has saliva dripping from their mouths. Not everybody walks with a cane. Not everybody walks with a walking stick. You'll be able to tell. So we need to change the narrative that a person living with a disability looks like this, because there is no look to it. There's absolutely no look. And we need to diminish the idea that there is a look when it comes to disabilities, because that's very not so nice. It's really, really not so nice. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't need to. I've had. She's not the first person that I've had to experience, say to me that, I guess, expect me to prove that I have a disability. I've had other people ask me to prove it. Not ask me, but say things like, oh, I don't think you're disabled, or I don't think you can see. I don't believe that you can't see. You look so well put together. I wouldn't have thought, this is that. You know what I'm saying? I understand that when people are saying certain things like that, well, it really depends on the tone. Some people are really coming from a good place, but tizala. I don't saying things like you don't look like it, because that's very invalidating. It's very, very invalidating. It's not nice. It's not nice. We need to stop saying statements like that. We need to stop expecting people with invisible disabilities to prove them unless the situation warrants that you need proof. Let us not say things like you don't look disabled. If you were really struggling, I'd be able to see that you're struggling. Let's stop expecting people to go into detail about their personal information that you are not going to have any need for. We need to stop that. We need to stop also assuming that people with disabilities look a certain way, and it needs to. Don't measure the validity of someone's disability by, I guess, how they look and all of those things. If someone comes to you and tells you I have a disability, please, let's do the right things, right? Let us do the right things. How has living with an how has living with an invisible disability affected me emotionally? Like I said, it has taken a toll on me. It's one of the reasons I have anxiety. Learning to accept myself has taken a long time. I'm still learning how to accept myself, even as an adult, I have found ways, obviously, to be able to do certain things, but I am not completely dependent, and I don't think I ever will be. I don't know, God willing, something changes in my life, something changes, or technologies are developed and I'm able to go and get surgery, or hopefully my vision improves to a point where I can get surgery, because the last time I went to see my optometrist, I was told that I would not be able to get surgery because I have nystagmus, which is involuntary eye movement, right? So I'm unable to do anything to my vision. I can't get surgery. I cannot get contacts. I cannot up my glasses, or I cannot up my frame for my glasses, or reduce it. I can't change the lenses of my glasses, anything like that. We just have to hope that eventually my vision will get better and maybe I will qualify for surgery. So yeah, that does take an emotional toll on you. I wish to be able to wake up in the mornings and go out on the town and do things alone. I want to be able to get out of the house and go for lunch alone and not have to worry about things like, how am I going to be able to direct a cab to my house, whether it's to or from. I want to be able to go to a restaurant and not have to ask people all the time, oh, where's this place? Where's that place? Where's this place? Where's that place? Because my memory doesn't serve me well, because I can't really see things fully. I want to be able to do things alone. I want to be able to have a trip where I go somewhere and I come back completely by myself. And it sucks. It really does suck, because it makes me feel like, I tend to feel like very burdensome to the people around me, even though they always remind me that I am not a burden, that they are here to help me, and they do all of the things that they do to help me because they want to, not because they have to. They do it because they genuinely want to see me living life, and they genuinely want to make my living experience easier. As much as they do that, it still does affect me, because I a part of me, I guess, just feels like, this person is just saying that to be nice to me. You know what I mean? Like, a part of me does feel like, I understand, I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate my love and the love and support my support system gives me so much. But, like, a silly little part of me will just feel like, maybe this person and I really just wish that they didn't have to like go out of their way to do these things for me, or I really wish I could do these things by myself, because I understand that people get tired, people have lives of their own, and so sometimes having to put me into all of that, I tend to feel like that can be exhausting, and it's okay to say it can be exhausting, because real life shit, it can be, or it is. Real life shit, it is. So yeah, it does take an emotional toll on me. But I try my best to make the best out of the situation. Some days are easier than others. Having this invisible disability makes me anxious about going anywhere. Even if I've been to the place before, I'm still going to be anxious about going. Maybe not as anxious, but just, hey, I'm always just so worried about who I'm going to meet, what I'm going to find. Am I going to be able to, get by? Things like that. And yeah, I've gotten counseling for it. I am going to, when I start working again, I'm going to start going for therapy as well to be able to deal with that, because now I have to deal with navigating my invisible disability as an adult. So I do want to get someone to, help me through the emotions that I haven't really dealt with when it came to dealing with it as a child or dealing with it as a teenager and things like that. And just also, helping me to find ways of navigating it easier as an adult. I do want to eventually go to a school where they learn about, I do want to go to a school for special needs school, like things like people with visual impairments like myself. I want to go to a school where we can read in Braille, and maybe I can learn how to read in Braille, learn how to get by on a day-to-day, learn it from people who actually have gone through it, or people who are equipped to teach people about things like this, and I'm not saying that the ways in which my loved ones have try to help my situation are not useful. They are, right? But there are people who can see normally, or there are people who are not in the same boat as I am. So, obviously they will not fully understand or fully grasp what I'm dealing with, right? So going to a school where there's, going to a school or meeting with someone who's equipped in dealing with situations like that, I'm gonna get to hear from them and how do you navigate this? How do you do this? How do you do that? You know what I mean? And also just going for therapy. I'm also going to be able to explain to someone who's who has a degree in helping people in terms of things like that. You know what I mean? Get to unpack all of that with them and things like that. So yeah, I do honestly try to make the best out of my situation. It's not the easiest thing, but every day we wake up and razama. And 23 years later, I'm still here. I have finished. I've gone through school. I have, I've done a lot of things. I literally went for a photo shoot last week. I went out on my first, I made a friend recently and I went out on a date and I used a cab all by myself. I literally called the cab in the morning and I went there and I did it all alone, which is a big deal for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I have not been able to do that. I was at a point in my life where I was too anxious to do things like that, because I would worry about people hurting me. I'd worry about people kidnapping me. I still have those worries, but I'm just you know what, girl, you just gotta take the risk and you just have to do what you have to do. You know what I mean? But obviously there are measures in place for situations where I have to deal with these things by myself, right? We have measures in place that are set so that when I'm doing this by myself, all of that stuff, the people around me are aware that I'm going by myself and all of that stuff. So yeah, I do try to make the best out of my situation. And yeah, man, that's just how it is. That's really just how it is. The one thing that I will make another episode, I think, for this, because I really do want to sit down and voice out my suggestions. I do feel that there needs to be more that is done in Botswana. I'll speak in Botswana specifically. That needs to be done to cater to people with visual impairments. I want to be able to enter into a bank and know that me, as someone living with a visual impairment, I will be helped, and I will be helped accordingly. As of right now, I don't think we have that stuff in place. Even with shops, I don't think we have that stuff in place. Razama, Khwazamiwa, I'll say go to shop on Khwazamiwa in the sense that they have big billboards and big pricing things and stuff like that, but more needs to be done. And like I said, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write all of that down, and we will have a separate episode for that. I think the one thing I know that is done to cater to people with visual impairments, go main mall, go the zebra crossing that is by Cresta, I think it's Cresta Presidential Hotel. There is a pedestrian crossing that has a ringer thing, when it's time for pedestrians to cross. If you are someone osaboning, right, there's a bell thing, there's a ringer thing that happens, that goes off, so that lets you know that you can cross. They also have the sign, pedestrians cross on the stop sign thingies. On the I guess it's a traffic light or whatever. They have that sign there, and that is pretty much the only thing I've seen that caters to visually impaired people, and I really, really love that so much. So I know that in Botswana definitely more can be done. I guess it just takes, people who live with disabilities like mine to come out and really speak more on things like this and what measures we feel need to be put in place. And yeah, all I can say is that we need more. I think for now, all I can say is that we need more large printed things. We need more companies to really teach or to hire people who are equipped in helping people with visual impairments or invisible disabilities. Hire people and train people to be able to help people with invisible disabilities, so that their experiences when they go there are easier, to lessen the anxiety, to make the experience a lot more pleasant for the next person. Don't hire people that are going to now start asking me to prove that I can see. Don't go now you are giving me a stank face because you think I'm lying. Like, no. So yeah, I think we definitely need that. I think I will have, like I said, I will have a second episode. So if there's anything I've missed in this episode, we'll definitely talk more about it in the episode where I speak on what accommodative measures need to be put into place. But yeah, man, I think that's pretty much all I have to say. This was a pretty lengthy episode. I hope that you got to understand what living with an invisible disability is like from my story. And I just want to let anybody living with an invisible disability know that your disability is valid. No one should ever tell you your disability is not valid, and no one has the right to tell you that your disability is not valid or it's invalid. Nobody has a right to validate it. Validate or invalidate it. Sorry. Nobody has a right to invalidate it. Nobody has a right to invalidate your disability. As long as you know it and you're living with it, that is all that matters. And to the people who don't have invisible disabilities, let's practice kindness. Let's practice accommodating people living with disabilities. Let's be mindful of how we speak to people living with invisible disabilities. Just because you cannot see it doesn't mean it is not valid. Be mindful of how you speak to people living with invisible disabilities. Be mindful of how you approach the conversation. Don't just assume. Don't just decide. Don't just do. No. Let's be guided. Let us be guided. That is all I have for this episode. Like I say, we're gonna form another one. We're gonna record another one, and I will talk more about this. But that is all I have to share for today. I really hope that this was an insightful episode, and I hope that you can take something away from it. I hope that there's someone out there who has the same situation as mine that feels less alone from this conversation. Share your experiences in the comment section. If you're someone living with an invisible disability, I would like to hear about it in the comments. How have you dealt with that? If you know someone who has one, how have you dealt with helping them? How has being around someone with an invisible disability affected you? Because we also don't talk enough about the effects of living with someone with a disability, and I'd like to hear more about that. I wish I could actually, maybe I'll interview one of my friends or one of my family members and really just ask them about the effects of living with someone with a disability, or the effects of living with me as someone with an invisible disability. So I'm speaking real fast. But yeah, guys, this is all I have to say for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one.